Everyone needs a companion, and the plants in your garden are no different. Today's day 11 of the 30-day gardening challenge, and today we are going to do a dive into companion planting. Companion planting is a topic that you hear a lot about depending on what type of sources you read, and a lot of the information that's shared about companion planting is subject to scrutiny, but there are other things that have held true. And I want to share the things that have held true for me in my garden so that you know what companion planting combinations work the best. And I want to share with you some research I found when I looked into how the different companion planting lore is arranged and what might seem true and what is maybe not so true or can't be proven. So, what I want to share with you, we'll get right into it. This is day 11 of the 30-day gardening challenge, 30 days to an entire garden, whether you are a newbie or you're just brushing up on some things. This is day 11. What is companion planting? Let's get right down to it. Companion planting is when you plant different crops together to give you benefits that you couldn't get if you just planted those crops separately in whole beds. So rather than doing monoculture, which is when you take one variety and you only grow that thing in your garden bed, we're companion planting. And so that means we are mixing it up. We are putting different plants together, and we're doing it because we derive certain benefits from them. Now, some of those benefits are just part of gardening lore, and I've seen them all, and you see them over and over again. And some of them have been proven to not be true, unfortunately, but some of them have been proven to be true. So here are some benefits that you'll realize when you companion plant. And before I get too far into it, homemade coffee. Before I get too far into it, let's talk about the difference. And I want to talk about intercropping and how I'm not going to be addressing that in this video. Intercropping is like companion planting on steroids. And it's when you really know exactly what you're planting, when it's coming out of that bed, and you're mixing other plants with it so that you can sometimes double your harvest and supercharge your yields because you are using the way plants grow to your advantage. And so maybe you've got some slower growing large plants and you're growing chives or scallions in amongst those plants because you know that the scallions will grow or the lettuce will grow and come off that bed before the big plants do. And so folks who have intercropping down to an art are folks that have been doing it for a while, and they're maximizing every little bit of production out of their bed space that they can, and they're super masters at it. I am not that person, and so I'm not going to be telling you something about I'm not going to be telling you anything about something I don't do and anything I don't know about. So we're going to keep it to companion planting in a home garden. And there are lots of benefits to companion planting in a home garden. And I have taken some notes. And if I look off to the side, it's just because I'm making sure I reference my notes so that I don't miss anything in this video. So there are a couple reasons we companion plant. One is to save our space. And so you can plant early, low feeders in with later plants that will feed a lot or have different root structures so that you can mix those in together and get some benefits of having both on the same bed. You'll also do this for soil health. Now, soil health, you'll have different root structures. Some plants have very shallow roots, like lettuce, for example, has a very shallow root system, whereas other plants like eggplant or tomatoes or carrots and potatoes, they have a very complex or deep involved root structure. And so you can mix those kinds of plants in beds together where they're not going to compromise each other. They're not going to steal from each other, for example. So you could plant some lettuce in your carrot bed, and those kinds of plants are going to have different root structures. They're not going to poach off of each other or cannibalize the nutrients from one to the other. So you can benefit, your soil health will benefit, and you'll be able to grow these plants together. And that's a benefit of it, right? Another thing is mutual physical support. So there's a lot of different shapes in our garden, right? And some of them will support some plants support others, and they do a really good job naturally with that. And in Latin America, the Three Sisters planting is a prime example of it. You have, in every planting hole, you'll have a corn seed, which will grow into a corn stalk. And then you'll have with that squash and beans. And so a bean plant will grow up. It's usually a pole bean plant, instead of a bush bean plant, obviously. So you get that maximization of the climbing. So that bean plant will climb up the corn stalk. And then at the same time, that squash plant will have those nice big leaves, and they'll spread out along the ground, and that will keep the weeds away from your corn as it grows. And so the Three Sisters planting is something that you've heard about, I know, and it is hugely beneficial. I'm reading some research just for this video, and in Latin America, when you have Three Sisters plantings on small farms, they are 30% more, they have 30% more yield than the same space with monoculture. So not only is it this like thing they used to do back in the day, but it's also still very good for yields. It's a smart thing to do. I'm going to be investigating it and doing some experimentation with it in my garden. My dad helps me in my garden if it comes to like hilling up corn or anything with the tractor. He likes to do because it's one of his favorite things to do, and he likes to hill up the corn, right? And so I think I'm going to get away from that though. If I've got my Three Sisters stuff, I might have a Three Sisters plot away from some of the main corn, because I am growing sweet corn for my subscription box this year. So I think what I'll do is I'll have my Three Sisters patch, and that way he can hill up with the tractor, and I can have my Three Sisters patch. But I'm super excited about that, and it is definitely a situation where these different plants give you different benefits. Another benefit of the Three Sisters operation is that the squash beetles don't seem to be as able to find the squash plants when they're just sort of like interspersed throughout the field. That is kind of what some of the research is showing. I was reading like a 25-page research paper about it, about the Three Sisters growing and other things down in Latin America on small farms. Small farms are considered 5 hectares and smaller. And so I was just reading about what they're doing down there to increase yields and to not have to use pesticides or herbicides. And so it was really interesting stuff that when you have those squash plants interspersed with the beans and the corn, the squash beetles don't seem to be as able to find them, I don't know what mechanism is at work here, if it's smell, if it's the way they look, I'm not sure exactly. But anyway, at any rate, Three Sisters also seems to be able to keep those squash borers, cucumber beetle type pests away, which is always a good thing. This year for my Three Sisters, I am going to plant some really attractive dent corn. There's a green dent corn that I want to get. There's some other heirloom dent corn varieties that I want to grow because I will be grinding those into cornmeal and corn flour. I'm going to be using a scarlet runner bean as my bean, because the scarlet runner beans have this amazing red flower, and the red flower does attract hummingbirds, which is great. I originally named my garden Hummingbird Gardens because of all of the mimosa trees around the garden and how many hummingbirds are there, like all summer long. But also, the scarlet runner bean flower is a scarlet red flower, which also attracts hummingbirds. And I hope it attracts other birds, because I believe the earworms, hopefully, will be a natural snack for some of those birds. If they're in there because they've been attracted to that red bloom, maybe once they get there, they'll see some earworms, and I won't have to worry about BT, because army worms and corn earworms, things like that, are becoming more and more resistant to BT. And that's what I've learned that they're finding down in Latin America as well. So that's the mutual physical support that I talked about. And it's specifically for things like anytime you have corn, like a big structure, you can have beans going up that corn to help you out, so you don't have to have a separate trellis. So some of us, and a lot of us actually, have heard about companion planting for insect management. And that happens either through, usually it's smells. And so marigolds onions, and spicy brassicas, as well as some nasturtiums. A lot of times, plants that have a bitter taste to them are really good at repelling insects. Now, some of the lore has been proven to be false, but some of it still holds true. So one of the things I wanted to do was kind of read to you some information about some of the things that are holding true for other folk. What I have learned that works for me is that bok choy, flea beetles and aphids absolutely love, love, love bok choy. And whenever I plant a bok choy trap crop on the end of some of my rows, all of my other brassicas at the end of those rows are untouched by these pests. They love the bok choy so much that they don't want to mess with what I have planted. And so then I just take that into account. And sadly, I haven't been able to have a really good, attractive, beautiful bok choy crop, but they don't mess with my cabbages and my other kales and sprouting broccolis and things like that. So I have 20-foot long rows in my main bed. They're 3.5 or 2.5 feet by about 20 feet long. And so for the first 3 or 4 feet of those on one end, I will just direct sow bok choy. Like I'm not putting a ton of effort into it. And whatever happens, happens. And those beetles love that. So I have found that to be true in my personal experience. What I've also found to be true, or others have found to be true, is that arugula, mustard, and Napa cabbage can also be effective trap crops. Let's see, sage and thyme can reduce moth populations on your Brussels sprouts. In Iowa, they have found that thyme, onion, and nasturtium help reduce cabbage loper. And some other folks have found that marigold, onion, and nasturtium will help keep cabbage worms away. So, and also with potatoes, there was some lore about marigolds helping keep the Colorado potato beetle away, but that did not prove true in studies. So let me know if any of this has actually held true for you in this companion planting lore, and we will have it down below this video for other people to try out. Squash and pumpkins. So squash and pumpkins are insect pollinated. So you have to have some sort of habitat that allows those bumblebees and other pollinators. What also I have learned is that you can plant nasturtium alongside squash, and that seems to keep your vine borers away for a little longer. And blue Hubbard squash attracts these guys with a vengeance. And so if you want to plant some other varieties, blue Hubbard squash is a good trap crop. Now, interestingly, I actually think blue Hubbard squash are adorable, and I would love to just grow them, but apparently the bugs like them too much. Let's see if I'm missing anything else. Yes. Oh, and planting marigolds near your squash can sometimes improve yield, and planting basil with your tomatoes can sometimes improve your yield as well. So basil and marigolds can reduce thrips in your tomatoes. I have not seen that personally, but the research has shown that has proved to be true. So give it a shot. Give companion planting a shot in your garden. I am going to do that this year with my garden a little more rigorously than I had in the past. In the past, I was a little more concerned with yield per bed and how many lettuce plants can I fit and blah, blah, blah. I'm getting a little bit away from that. I'm reducing down my crop plan this year to be a little more specific. And I have room in my backyard back here. 2 huge 100-year-old plus trees were knocked down by Hurricane Helene, sadly. But the upside is now my backyard gets sun and I can actually grow a garden back there. So I have alleviated some of my pressure in my main garden. The main garden was where I grew everything. And now I can grow some of my flowers and things back here. So because I have a little more space, I'm going to give companion planting a try. I'm not anywhere near the level of being able to intercrop yet, but you never know. So give it a shot, guys, or tell me what you know that has worked for you and put it in the comments below. This was day 11. Tomorrow's day 12. Day 12, we're talking about vertical growing, and I'm going to specifically talk to you about green stalk planters because I have 2 green stalk planters that were just delivered to my house. We're going to unbox them tomorrow. I'm going to put those together with you along for the ride, and you're going to get an idea of how much you can grow in a green stalk planter on your back porch. You can put insect netting over these to keep the deer out. And so if you live in a rural area that is just constantly infested with deer, this might be your chance. This might be your chance to have a big garden courtesy of green stalk planters. Vertical gardening tomorrow. Follow me wherever you get this content. Subscribe, follow, share, like, subscribe, please. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.